What is happening, everybody? I am back today and I have a wheel set review. It is Shimano's first ever gravel wheels, the GRX RX570s. Very sexy naming from Shimano as always. Now this is a set of wheels that is both very Shimano in a lot of ways, but very un-Shimano in a few. So let's jump in and I'll explain what I mean. The first very Shimano feature is a boring spec sheet. Shimano truly is one of the best in the business at turning very boring specs into actually very good wheels. So that wasn't a criticism as such, just a thing that Shimano does. They cost a boring 750 Australian dollars, which is not cheap or expensive. Weight is a positively dull 1720 grams for the set, which is neither light nor heavy. They have 24 spokes, front and rear, which is, that's a pretty boring number of spokes. All of them are straight pull and have external nipples on the rims. Now the rim width is 21.6 millimeters internally and 26 millimeters externally. It's pretty boring, actually. Yeah, pretty boring width there. Not particularly wide, not particularly narrow, especially within gravel wheels. It's just kind of right in the middle. And they are sticking with Shimano's legendarily boring angular contact bearings. Truly a spec sheet to fall asleep to. So let's move on to things that are less boring, and they are excellent to ride. I like Shimano wheels generally. I've owned multiple sets myself, I've reviewed a couple of sets, and there's just something about them that is just nice. You speak to people who've owned Shimano wheels and they're like, yeah, they're just good, they work, you know, yeah. That's just Shimano's wheels. At the time of review, they've done a bit over 1,000 kilometers with a bit of everything from single track, commuting in the city, and all the way up to fairly long gravel days, up to 100, even a couple that were 200 kilometers. They spent the whole time fitted to the Bossy Grit titanium gravel bike that I've been riding for the last few months. And the first thing I like about them is how they roll. They roll very nicely indeed, especially paired with a sort of good rapid rolling tire like the Schwalbe G1 All-Rounds, which are still a great tire. That's a really great combination for someone whose gravel bike is sort of more of a mixed terrain bike, because they're pretty good everywhere. Good on gravel, good on tarmac, and you know, not bad on sort of technical stuff. They're still gravel tires after all, but yeah, it's a great all-round setup and I really like it. They are light enough to accelerate well and they don't feel lumpen when you are climbing. The free hub engagement is pretty good too. There's not too much travel before the poles engage. It's actually quite good for a wheel set of this price. Stiffness feels fine as well, although that can be something that's a little bit hard to gauge with gravel wheels because you've got big tires at low pressure. But yeah, there was nothing that sort of led me to believe that there was any stiffness problems at all. Now comfort is fine for aluminium, perhaps a little bit more towards the stiffer end. They do occasionally knock me about just a little bit if you hit something very solid, or if you're on something like a corrugated road. Not bad for aluminium, well behind something like a well-sorted set of carbon gravel wheels. If you've never ridden carbon gravel wheels, they're friggin' amazing, super comfortable, but they're way more expensive, so that's why I'm sort of just going to focus on Shimano's being good for their price point and good for aluminium. Maybe the choice of straight pull spokes made them a little bit stiffer than if they'd gone with something like a J-bend, but you know, I can't compare it. They've been quite rugged as well. I've been pretty hard on them. I like to run really low tire pressures. The Schwalbe 38 mils that I've been using, I've been letting them drop down below 30 PSI on the rear and sort of to around 25 PSI on the front fairly regularly. And I smash them into a lot of tree roots, into a lot of rocks. I do like to head out into some of the local trails and sort of fire roads that, you know, have seen them take some very hard hits. And they have stayed absolutely straight the whole time, and there's no signs of damage or distress on the rims. They actually look pretty much as good as they did when they came out of the box, which is great. So the ride is everything that you'd expect from Shimano wheels at this price. They roll well, they spin up well, the free hub engagement is good, stiffness is fine, comfort is fine, everything's looking pretty fine. Very Shimano indeed. Now let's move on to the things that aren't quite as Shimano. And a couple of weeks ago, at around the 900 kilometer mark for these wheels, I had them torn down by a mechanic just to see how everything is going. Let's start with the good. The front wheel was excellent. arrows straight, spoke tensions were great, bearings were running smooth, not a problem at all. The rear was a different story. Spoke tensions on the non-drive side were quite highly variable, with sort of anywhere from 30 to 50% difference between the higher and lower spoke tensions. The drive side was consistent though. Again, they were perfectly straight though, so despite those tensions, they were still managing to be fine. Just something to be aware of. You could feel that the bearings were starting to run a bit rough, so we opened them up, and on the non-drive side, some water had gotten past the seal and it was quite dirty in there. You can see here, the grease had turned milky, which is a sign that water has gotten in. All the little ball bearings, which in this Shimano style of hub are kind of loose, they don't sit inside a race as such. They needed to be cleaned, so we pulled it out, cleaned everything up, re-greased everything, and put it back in. Oh, hang on, just pause everything for a second. I forgot to talk about the wobbly free hub when I did the initial recording, so here it is. The free hub was a little bit wobbly as well, as we found when we were tearing down the wheels. Okay, back to it. Now these aren't massive problems, but they're more than I would want to see in a wheel that is so close to new. It has been sort of Australian summer and into spring, so it's not like the wheels have gotten wet a lot. Certainly not enough for me to expect the seals to not be able to hold water out. And these are a very new wheel as well, so I don't know whether this is indicative of a broader problem or whether these things are just particular to this wheel set. These were sent to me for review by Shimano. I review what I get sent, and you know, that's what's happened. I have passed this back on to Shimano though, so they're aware of these particular things that have happened to me. So let's talk about whether I recommend the GRX RX570 wheels. And I would say yes. The set does hit a lot of the markers that you want to see from wheels from Shimano in this price point, and really from anyone in this price point. They perform nicely, they ride nicely, everything's kind of where you want it to be. Nothing's really amazing, but that's fine. These are only $750. They're not really gonna knock your socks off. Now those problems I told you about, again, that's not ideal, but who knows whether that's just my set or whether it's more. It's not enough for me to say don't buy them. It's more for me to recommend that people who do buy them, just keep an eye on them. Get them serviced sort of early on, within the first few months, get them checked over just to see what's going on with them. Could be that every other set in the world is completely fine and they will live a long and happy life with those people who buy them. And that is going to be where I'm going to leave it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have found this review useful. If you did, I would love it if you could hit the like, subscribe button, all that sort of stuff. That really helps me out. I've got written reviews in the description below. I've got all kinds of other nerdy stuff on my channel, so stick around, watch some other videos. Stay healthy, stay safe, ride bikes as much as you can in this crazy world we live in, and I will see you next time.